So thank you everyone for joining us. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the Northern Kentucky History Hour. I'm your host for tonight, Heather Cook, and I'm currently a sophomore at the College of Worcester studying political science and history. And I work at the Behringer-Crawford Museum as a visitor services associate while not in school. And currently tonight, I am joining you live from my dorm. Northern Kentucky History Hour is a project of the Behringer-Crawford Museum, which is Northern Kentucky's history museum. We'd like to thank all of our sponsors tonight. Behringer-Crawford Museum is supported in part by the City of Covington, Kenton County Fiscal Court, Arts Wave, Kentucky Arts Council, the Northern Kentucky Sports Hall of Fame, the Carol Ann and Ralph V. Hale Jr. Foundation, as well as our members. If you're not yet a member of the museum, you can consider joining us for access to discounts and exclusive programming, and you can learn more about that and join at our website, which is bcmuseum.org. Before we begin tonight, we're going to go over a few reminders. If you have a question or comment to share, you can type it into the chat or the Q&A feature, and we're going to try to get to as many questions as possible immediately following the presentation. There will also be a trivia question tonight, and the first person to respond with the correct answer in the chat on Zoom or Facebook Live will win a Northern Kentucky History Hour prize, and most importantly, bragging rights. So let's meet tonight's speakers. John and Martha Lange's introduction to the undersea world began on a trip to Maui, Hawaii in 2004. The resort was offering a try scuba class, and on a whim, they decided to attend. 6 weeks of lessons followed with open water checkout dives in Bonaire, Netherland Antilles to complete their certification in 2006. After experiencing the beauty and diversity of Bonaire's marine park, they vowed to return every year and have. Beyond this, their love of diving has taken them to many exotic locations around the world, from the Caribbean to the Indo-Pacific. Also joining us tonight is BCM's own curator of collections, Jason French. So welcome everyone. You can go ahead and begin if you're ready.
How is everyone this evening? We're excited to have this exhibit. We're excited to work with John and Martha Lange. So just a little background of what Photo Focus is. Photo Focus is a regional biannual photography or a series of photography exhibits throughout our region in Northern Kentucky and also in Cincinnati. And it's something that we've been involved in really since the beginning of Photo Focus here at Behringer-Crawford Museum. So every 2 years, we put together a photography exhibit. This year, we wanted to do something special. Both John and Martha volunteer with us on a regular basis here at the museum, and we're always hearing stories of their adventures and occasionally getting to see some of the pictures. So we wanted to, if we could, if everything worked out for us, we wanted to share their love and their passion with our guests and our audience. And I was very excited when it all worked out, and really learning more about how they got into what they do and where they've been has been really much of the high point of my last year or so as we go into the planning of this. So we'll start. Well, let me tell you the trivia question before we start, and I'm going to interview them. I even have notes, so
and we don't.
So it's something that if you look at me, if I'm trying to read the notes, I'm just wanting to make sure we get everything. There's a lot we want to talk about. So our trivia question tonight is, if you have a red ribbon and you are diving, at what point, at what depth will you no longer be able to see red? So at some point in time in this presentation, you might hear that answer. Feel free, if you know the answer, to go ahead and put it in the comments. And let's start with just the story of John and Martha Lange.
Well, we've been married 52 years, and we have 3 sons, 3 wonderful daughter-in-laws, and 6 grandchildren, which we're very proud of. and we like to travel. So, as it said on the introduction, John and I had been going to Maui with some frequency. We love to snorkel, and they were offering this try scuba, and I was not very interested in trying scuba. And after a little bit of coaxing, it was like, well, we're going to be in a pool 10 feet deep. I'm sure I'll be safe. So we did that. And afterwards, the dive master came up and said, I'd like to take you out on the beach here, and we can go down and do a short dive. And I was very reluctant. And he finally said, I will take just you and John. I want you to tell me things that you were concerned about. When I'm snorkeling, I was looking at things that, I was worried about seagrass, something would come out of the seagrass, or if we saw eels and things like that. So anyway, he took us down, probably 20 minutes maybe.
Yeah,
we were
20 minutes.
We were down, and those were the first things he took me to. Here's the seagrass, and he moves it, and there was this beautiful green sea turtle. So he tried to comfort me and make me feel less concerned about all my worries. So okay, that was that. We came home, and so that was 2004. And then for Christmas, I gave John and I a present of scuba lessons. And I had checked around. I knew that John was not going to do this without me. We'd have to do it as a team. So I thought, okay, you can do it. And I went and talked to one of the local dive shops, and they explained to me what was entailed in learning to be a scuba diver, that there was going to be lessons, classroom lessons, pool lessons, and then you had to do an open water certification. So you had to take what you learned, go into whether it's a lake or quarry or wherever it is, and demonstrate those skills. And they did say, well, we are going to be going to Bonaire as a group in June. And I said, sign us up. We'll be ready by then. So the time came, we went to Bonaire, and we came a little early so we could get all of our testing done and we're certified. And we started diving with the group when they arrived.
Yep. And
so our first dive, it was beautiful, but at that point, when you're new, you are looking at your gauges, you're thinking, okay, pretty soon we can turn around and go back and be done with the dive, because you're nervous, you're doing it right, you're doing that. But, after a while, you get to be a little more comfortable, and you start seeing more things. And the coral reefs were beautiful. At that point in time, we only saw big fish.
Big stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Parrotfish. I didn't know there was little stuff yet. But after about 10 days on that first trip, I looked at John and I said, I'm so comfortable here. I think we should do this every year. And
we have
consistently done it, and sometimes twice a year. So it's really become a big part of our vacations, our dive vacations, is going to Bonaire. And we have grown to love the island and the people that we've met. We've met so many people that live there. We've met a lot of people that we now meet there who are, fellow divers. So it's very comfortable. So that's anything else you want to add about why we love Bonaire?
No, I think it's going to Bonaire for us now is visiting family. We've spent so much time with them, and we have Bonairean friends. For instance, our cab driver calls us on our birthday. So from Bonaire. And so we just have very close family in Bonaire now.
And we look forward to it every time we go. So, yeah.
How many times, or I know you've gone about every year, a couple of times a year.
Yeah.
What does that add up to in time that you've spent in Bonaire?
Now we've been there like 28.
28 times, and we've spent 58 weeks there since 2006. So about a year and 6 weeks since 2006. So a significant amount of time.
Yeah. So you spent a lot of time there.
Yeah, we love warm, clear water.
let's get back to, you went through Try Scuba and you learned scuba. So what is scuba and kind of what makes it different than just snorkeling or other types of maybe you think about the old diving with the brass helmets or whatever.
Right,
So
right.
what or you're not in a diving bell or something along those lines. So can you explain to people like what scuba is, and then at what point in time during that learning and everything did you start maybe taking pictures?
Oh,
Yeah, but scuba, I mean, you hear some people call deep sea diving, skin diving, all it's scuba diving. Scuba, SCUBA, stands for self-contained underwater breathing apparatus. So self-contained is the key. All of the other things you were talking about with the diving bell and the suits and all, those are all relying on air being pumped from the surface. So you're not self-contained. You're not free to go anywhere you wish to go. With scuba, you're wearing the air tank on your back. You are fully self-contained underwater. I don't know if you want to get into equipment at this point, or
Well, I mean,
I mean, we're there.
yeah, we're there.
We're
Let's talk
there.
about
Right.
some of the
Right.
equipment that it's,
We're there. So yeah, just go into some of the equipment for those of you that don't know or haven't really heard of scuba. Probably first and foremost is an air tank, because you do need to carry your own air supply with you. And the air tank is connected to a regulator, and all that's doing is reducing the pressure. The pressure in the air tank starting out is about 3,000 PSI, so it's a very high pressure tank. And it's reducing that pressure down to more of a normal atmospheric pressure. And it's designed so that you don't have to draw on it. It knows when you're starting to breathe in and it feeds you air. It doesn't feel any different breathing on a good regulator than it does breathing here in this room. You're not struggling for air. It's not trying to force feed you. It's breathing. You wear a wetsuit, and the wetsuit is there for a couple of reasons. One, it protects you from the corals, and the coral and some of the stinging pieces down there, but the coral especially is very sharp. It's calcium basically, and it will give you small cuts and scrapes. It's not like you're going to have a massive cut, but the wetsuit helps protect you from some of that. They're often called, a thin one is often called a rash guard.
or skin.
Yeah, or a skin, because when you're cut or sliced a little by a coral, it tends not to heal very quickly. It can take, even for a very small one, it can take a while to heal. So you wear a wetsuit for a number of reasons. Certainly have your mask, because we don't see well in salt water. You have fins for propulsion. And probably beyond the regulator, one of the most important pieces of equipment you have is a dive computer. And that dive computer is always telling you how much air you have left, how deep are you, and how much longer can you stay at this depth without getting the bends. And the bends is nitrogen that is dissolved into your bloodstream at too high of a level. That's a very complex, I won't even go there, but we do everything we can to avoid the bends.
Well, and that's why you're constantly monitoring your equipment that's telling you what's going on, how much air you have. I mean, when you're a new diver, you go through all the class and you know what's supposed to happen depending on how deep you go. And I remember we probably had 5 dives under our belt.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at my computer and it's saying that I have, less air than I thought I should have. And I thought, oh my goodness, I must have a leak. And then at this point, John and I cannot communicate with each other. We haven't learned how to do that underwater yet. So I grabbed his computer and I looked at him and they were both the same. And then I looked and it's like, well, I'm at 80 feet. I shouldn't be here. And you'll use more air. You use it more quickly the deeper you go. And so that is why really you need experience. The more experience you have, the more comfortable you are with diving, and the more you're aware of just how
Yeah.
you breathe and how you dive. So,
Yeah, and I just briefly, I did say the wetsuit was for two reasons, and I only talked about one,
Yeah, yeah.
the rash guard. The second reason is to hold your body heat. The body loses heat 25 times faster in water than it does in air. So if you're standing outside in 78-degree air, it's going to take you a long time to lose enough body heat to feel cool, because that is cooler than your body temp. In water at 78 degrees, you're going to start feeling cold in about probably 15 minutes, 20 minutes, because you're actually starting to lose body heat.
and
So
and
the wetsuit puts a layer. It's called a wetsuit because there is water inside it, but it's a very thin layer. Your body heats it up, and it actually acts as an insulator.
mhm. And when we dive, we usually are underwater for about an hour each time we dive. So that is a fairly long time. And like John says, you do lose some of that body heat over that period of time, especially if you dive multiple times in a day.
Right, it's gonna take a little longer to,
Yeah.
Mhm.
you know,
Yes.
have to lay out in the sun or something.
Right, right.
So, you talked about, that experience being, only 5 dives in or whatever. So how many dives have you had in now, roughly?
Well, I'm about 986
86,
or something now.
and I am just over 1,000. So we're both right at 1,000 dives, meaning we've spent $1,000 underwater.
But we started, well, like I said, in 2006, and we found out how much we love this experience and something that we could share. That we just went on a lot of dive trips, and so
Yeah.
you rack up those dives pretty quickly.
So, yeah, you have gone on a lot of dive trips. You've been doing this so how many different places and where have you been around the world?
Okay, well, just in the Caribbean, of course, Bonaire, and we've been in Belize and Utila, St. Lucia, and in Mexico also.
Right.
But really fantastic diving in the Indo-Pacific, and well, we were in Hawaii too, which is nice. But we went to Malaysia, and which is off the coast of Borneo, and it was a resort that is on a sandbar. So you're not, you're not attached to any land. You really can't even see any land where you are.
Right.
And you have these little huts that are over the water and these huge sea stars that are down. And so it was just fascinating. You'd go to Scuba Dam, which is a really, it's a location you don't often get a chance to go. And the things that you see there are really beyond, you can't see anything like that in the Caribbean. The big bumphead parrots that we have a picture of.
Yeah.
There is an area where they call it the Barracuda tornado.
Yeah.
And there are thousands of barracudas that just swim in this tornadic fashion. I mean, you can swim up into them. They're not hunting.
Yeah.
I don't really even know why they do that.
And
But
they,
it's
yeah,
phenomenal.
nobody knows why, even the people there. They
Mhm.
see this formation of barracuda, but
Mhm.
I mean, unless it's somewhere that the oceans are meeting and swirling and there's an extra food source in there, but
Yeah.
nobody's sure why. But you can go see this barracuda tornado.
And quite a few sharks we would see, which were really no danger. They're just resting for the day. There were a lot of beautiful turtles. It was really a very exciting location.
Yeah, it was. And like when we went to Indonesia, we spent, when we're taking that long of a trip, we like to spend a couple of days before we get to the dive location, just for body clock adjustment. Because, I mean, Indonesia, Malaysia, Fiji,
Yeah.
they're all halfway around the world. So
12 hours.
they're
yeah.
exactly 12 hours from us. And it takes usually at least a full day to get there. So your body really has no idea what time it is when you get there. So we like to spend a couple of days just to kind of get adjusted before we get in and start diving. But when we went to Indonesia, we spent 3 days in Bali before we went, and it was just, I mean, it's a beautiful area, just getting involved with the people and the culture, and it's just one more side of diving. No, we're not diving, but we are immersing ourselves in the culture, and that's just as much fun.
No, that's great. Let's see, I want to make sure we cover all of our topics here in a orderly fashion. So we've covered equipment, we've covered scuba. We have talked about the many places that you've gone to. Let's
Do
see.
you want to tell them about this? About the,
We can probably start talking about some of your photographs. I was going to ask actually a little bit about your photography and your equipment too.
Oh, yeah.
So let's start with that.
Okay.
And kind of, at what point in time in scuba did you decide we gotta show this to other people? You know, and
Probably, did we even on our first to second trip, they really weren't worth saving.
Yeah, no, we
weren't
we
really
probably
good.
have 10 only because we took them on that trip.
But I think after that, like on maybe 2009, we started doing a little bit better. And it isn't, I mean, certainly cameras help, but it also has a lot to do with, is your buoyancy good enough that you can be still enough to take the picture? You're not kicking up the reef. You're not disturbing anything.
Kicking up silt.
Yes.
Because there's a lot of silt on the bottom, and if you're trying to get a picture and somebody swims by too close or gives a little fin kick, all of a sudden there's just a cloud over your picture.
Well, and that was something when you were talking about equipment, that I thought was interesting, and I will kind of get back to the initial question. But if you're not used to scuba and you don't think about it, you're carrying ballast, you're carrying weight with you.
Yes.
So that you're evenly, if you're not weighted right in your suit, you'll be on your back or on your side. You can't, your buoyancy is, so that's something that you have to learn individually.
Yes.
Weight of the tank, weight of your equipment, and then extra weight with you as well.
No, and that's a very good point. And I told you that we wear a buoyancy compensator. It really compensates in both directions. It has built-in weight pockets, and you carry weight to go down, even though you're carrying 60 to 70 pounds of equipment by the time you have the tank on your back, but you still need to carry weights to go down. And it's like, how can that possibly be with 60 pounds? Well, the air tank is virtually weightless. It's full of air. So out on the ground, out on the dock, yeah, it weighs 50 pounds, but when you throw it in the water, it's almost neutrally buoyant. The air inside it is keeping it floating as much as the weight of the steel is trying to push it down. But besides the weight pouches, there's a bladder, an air bladder built into the back, and you have an inflator valve hooked up. So as you're going down, the deeper you go, the more water pressure is on you. As the water pressure is on you, it compresses you, it compresses your wetsuit, it compresses everything on and forces the air out of it. So you stink. The deeper you go, the faster you sink. So in order to stay neutrally buoyant, you put a few puffs of air, and you get the balance between the weight you're carrying and the air bladder that's holding you up, and you attempt to get weightless, neutrally buoyant. Then you're not struggling at all to maintain up, down. And when she was talking about photography, one of the really tricky parts is to get to that point of neutrally buoyant. Because, you know, in the water, on the ground, if you're trying to take a picture, you're standing on the earth, you're not moving. In the water, you're trying to take a picture. If you're not neutral, your body's moving up, your body's moving down. You don't want to kick the reef. And
And the subject is not still.
right,
either.
everything
It's a
is
fish.
moving.
It's moving. You know? So, yeah, and it really just takes experience. You know, the more you do it, the more you find little things that'll help you get buoyant, you know, more neutrally
Mhm.
buoyant, and how you hold your camera. Sometimes, I mean, I like holding my camera like this. You a lot of times
I
just like
usually just
one
hold,
hand, but I feel like I'm more stable when I'm holding with both hands. So it's all a personal feeling how
oh, it
what
is,
works.
yeah. But it just, a quick story about cameras. Our first, I guess it was our first trip to Hawaii after we were certified. And we bought a Canon with an underwater housing. You have to have a housing for them naturally, because most cameras are not waterproof. And our very first dive in Hawaii, I put the camera all in the housing. I was very careful. We walked out into the water. I got in about this deep and I looked at the housing, and it was a clear housing, and it was half full of water. Because there was one little thread that got into,
A little hair.
yeah, like a little hair that got into the seal for the camera, and it leaked and flooded. So we lost our first camera to the water within about the first 10 minutes of being in the water.
Old Poseidon took it.
Yeah.
So now you've kind of settled in, you have different cameras. that,
Yeah, we do.
Um,
We've upgraded a couple of times.
You camera own.
Yeah, as digital cameras have improved, we've upgraded a couple of times, and we each have one.
and just the expertise of being in the water enough to understand buoyancy, and also there takes understanding the habitat, I would assume, and really
Oh, it
getting
does.
used to the reefs and what you're going to expect to see, kind of planning, like any wildlife photography, you've got to go where it's at.
Mhm.
So you might see things that surprise you, but you also go if you know that this is going to live here.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You know, you're going to find a sea star here. You're going to find an eel in this area, or turtles hiding in grass, or wherever.
Right.
You're going to find those. So it's also just knowing the environment.
And you know, each time, every dive we make is different.
It's different.
You could be jumping off the same dock, which we do in
Yeah.
Bonaire every single day in the afternoon, and everything is different. You know, unless there's some seahorses that we know will hang around in the same spot, or maybe a frogfish. But so it's always a surprise. You know, we're always constantly looking in and around and underneath, and going very slow. When you first start diving, it's like, how fast can I get to half tank, and how fast can I get back? And then you realize you're missing everything. You just take all the time that you want and see what's there.
Yeah,
Let's talk about a few of the pictures that you've taken
Yes.
and that are in the exhibit, so that people can kind of experience that. So let's start with one that people may be familiar with.
Nemo.
So this looks like Nemo. It's not
Not
a
Nemo.
Nemo. So what are we looking at here?
Go ahead, get your picture.
This is a false clown that we took this picture in Indonesia. And this was one that we were just thrilled to death to find, because we, like most, had seen Nemo, but never really our own Nemo in the reef itself. It's called the false clown only because the black lines around the white lines on a true clown fish, those are much wider, much
Mhm.
more distinct. But you could sit and watch these guys all day. They go back into
Mhm.
the anemone, and then they'll come flying out at you, and they look at each other, look at you, go back in, and you could just sit all day long and
Yes,
watch these.
yes.
Yeah, it's a beautiful picture. It's one of our favorites here. So what's our next one we're going to look at? Trying to remember, frogfish or shrimp?
Let's see, we're gonna find out. Here.
Well, let's just go to.
Oh, that,
Oh, well, you want to go back to the?
that is so interesting. It's called a Christmas tree worm. And it lives on the top of the hard coral, and it lives in a tube. And it comes out and flowers like that and feeds in the water. And if you come close to it, and even just wave your hand over the top of it, it sucks down into that tube.
Like immediately.
Immediate. And then you just wait, it comes back out again. And they're just beautiful, delicate little creatures. And they're in orange and white and gray and white and yellow. I love, and you'll see, maybe 10 or 12 on a coral head.
Yeah, those are about 1 inch diameter. Just
Yeah,
give
very
you a
tiny.
feel for size.
So
Let's see here. There are so many beautiful pictures to choose from. So, all right, here we go. This little guy here. What are we looking at?
well, this is a
Spotted cleaner.
I was gonna go with banded. Spotted cleaner shrimp, and he is probably an inch and maybe an inch and a half.
Yeah,
And he is on a giant anemone. And these anemones can have, like these tips are like a pretty pink, sometimes they're purple, sometimes they're yellow, but they live within that. And when fish come by and touch that anemone, it triggers a response of the anemone. It kind of sucks down a little bit, and that tells the shrimp that there's something out there that they should go clean. And it becomes a cleaning station. These fish will come by, they'll stop, that will come out and clean the fish. It could even be, we've had, eels come
Yeah.
by. Eels are cleaned by different types of shrimp and fish. But
so they're eating their dinner and the fish are being cleaned of parasites.
that's right. They're very delicate
So
looking.
it's a really interesting symbiotic
It
kind
is,
of
It
it
is.
is.
relationship, and you
it
think,
is.
well, that little thing is just going to be lunch for the big thing.
No,
But it's not.
no.
It's not.
No,
That's
it serves its purpose.
It does.
that is really interesting how that ecosystem functions together.
Mhm.
So our next one, because let's see what. Well, there's a eel. and-
Yeah,
It's being cleaned.
All right, I think
How difficult is it for
it is.
these kind of pictures?
Yeah. So what-
Sometimes it's luck,
it,
sometimes.
it's better to be lucky than good.
Oh.
Let me leave it that way.
well, here's a frogfish,
Or
right?
frogfish.
Yeah.
Yes. And they hide in very tiny places underneath things. You have to really look for them. And what you usually spot is the eye and their little feet, because they look like frog feet.
Yep.
And he's about 4 inches, maybe 5
Yeah,
inches.
4 or 5 inches.
And they for the most part just sit there and wait for something to go by. They have a lure that comes off their forehead, and it's waving out in the water column to entice fish to come up. And when they get close enough, and if he's interested, he opens his mouth and quickly grabs that fish.
But interestingly, you look at what his background is, the yellow coral, and he's yellow. He's very hard to see. If he were to move over to an orange coral, like a lot of sea creatures, he would change colors. Now, he can't change colors immediately, but if he moved over to an orange coral, within a few weeks, a month, he'd start being an orange frogfish, because they don't move around
No,
a
they
lot.
don't.
But things like octopus and some of those, they can change colors
Mhm.
immediately to
Mhm.
blend into their background.
Mhm.
They're
Mhm.
very hard to
We
spot.
get very, very excited when we spot one of these guys.
Yeah. Yeah, they're few and far between.
Mhm.
All right, well, let's see what we've got here.
They got
That's
a
a-
turtle coming up.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think there might be a
Well, those are
turtle.
the
Oh,
bump
no,
Oh,
heads.
let's
yeah.
go back to the bump heads.
Now,
'cause-
those are the bumphead parrots. And when we were in Indonesia, we saw one of those. Now, they're pretty big. You can't tell on there, but they're probably 4 foot
Mhm.
long and probably weigh in at about 250, 300 pounds, something like that. And when we got to Malaysia a few years later, we saw this whole school of them. And just imagine swimming and seeing a school of fish that are 4 foot long and each weigh about 300 pounds. That was very awe-inspiring.
Yeah.
Yes, it was.
And they eat coral though, don't they?
Yes.
They're
They
so
do.
they're
Yeah,
just-
they eat the coral, they eat the algae that's on the coral. And then they digest it and they poop sand.
Poop sand, and you can see they are pooping sand.
Yeah, you can see some of them if you look close. So you owe them for a lot of your beaches and
Let's see. Oh, here we
Okay,
go.
this sweet little turtle. We were swimming along and I noticed a turtle at the surface because I go up, periodically to get some oxygen. They come back down. Saw him swimming down. So I thought, I'm going to get my camera ready. And I started taking a movie of him as he's coming down. Of course, he sees me and he winds around and he starts swimming towards these gorgonians. And he turns around and he plops himself down like that. And he was just sitting there like, you can't see me now. So I went around and then I took this picture of him and it was just such a delight to see. They're so sweet.
Playing
And,
hide and seek.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
We figured you really cannot see me.
yeah, he acted like he was invisible. He just laid there, let us swim all around him and
Yeah.
he wasn't running.
Oh, that's something. Now, before we can look at some more pictures, but I also wanted to kind of talk about, I know Bonaire is a very special place for you, and it's a special, it's really a preserve for the coral reefs around it,
Yeah, it's a marine park.
a marine park. So I know there's some story of kind of how that happened. And I want to make sure that we get to address that in
Yes.
this discussion too. So I love these pictures. I want people to come and see them but I also want them to be able to hear some of these stories that I've had a chance to experience. And I would like you to share that as well. So
Well, Bonaire, for just where it is, I mean, it's part of the ABC Islands, Aruba, Bonaire, Curacao. Not many people have heard of Bonaire unless you're a diver. Bonaire's been around, I mean, forever, basically, but it really got started in diving. Captain Don Stewart went to Bonaire. He was hoping to shoot a movie, which never really worked out, but he went in March or so of 1962. While he was there, his boat sunk. So he was kind of stuck on Bonaire. But he was a diver. He had been in the Navy. He was a diver. And he was just seeing how pristine the reefs were in Bonaire. And Bonaire had really no other natural resources. They have salt, they have sea salt, but really no other natural resources, no other industry. So he saw the value of maintaining the reefs and really making Bonaire a diver's paradise, which is what's now on their license plate. So he was very instrumental in, along the way, getting Bonaire, assigned whatever as a marine park, meaning the entire beach area, the entire surface of Bonaire
And
Is-
climb up there.
and Klein, which is small Bonaire, but it's uninhabited. But the entire surrounding area is a marine park, meaning there's no mooring or no anchoring. There are permanent moorings, so boats' anchors don't tear up the reef. There's no spear fishing. There's really no commercial fishing. The locals are allowed to fish, but no one else.
Only one boat to a mooring.
Yeah, one boat, so the number of boats is very limited. And it's all a protected park. And Captain Dunn is really the father of all of that. Captain Dunn, we had the pleasure to meet him because where we stay is at Captain Dunn's habitat. So it was one of the first hotels to be built on Bonaire. And Captain Dunn was quite a character, but he had been a diver forever. And he was diving back in 62 when there was no such thing as a dive computer. So Captain Dunn carried a red ribbon tied to his BCD. And he knew that as you go down in depth, that red is the first color to get absorbed, filtered out by the water. And he found that at about 100 feet, a red ribbon looked totally black. So that's what he used. He did not have the technology to say, I'm at 40, 50, 60, 70, but when you get over 100, it can be a problem. And that's an important depth. He had a red ribbon tied right on his BCD and he'd be, oh, I'm at about 100 feet. Maybe I better not go any deeper.
Oh,
But
that's-
he was quite a character. And like I said, we had the privilege to meet him personally. And I actually have a red ribbon that he gave me in my logbook.
Well, and his motto, and when he would greet new divers in Bonaire, his I guess advice to them was to take
Take
pictures.
only
Only
pictures
pictures and
and
memories.
memories and leave only bubbles.
So that, there's no taking of anything from under the water. They really do not even allow you to wear gloves, because if divers wear gloves, then they think they can touch something, and that way it's just helping to preserve the
Right, right.
environment, because you start messing with the corals and the fish and stuff, pretty soon you don't have this beautiful, pristine destination that people
Right.
thrive to.
Well, let's talk about some more of the pictures, just because I wanted to make sure we got to that story and
Yeah.
kind of talk about Captain Don too, and I didn't want us to lose track of time a little bit. We got a few, yeah. So, let's see.
Oh, no, I was talking about the fish that will change colors. This is a scorpion fish. And they will, not immediately, but they can change pretty fast. And if you look at him in the surrounding that's there, he is very, very well hidden, camouflaged into his surrounding, which, I mean, they do for protection, but he's ugly as sin, but that's his camouflage.
About how big is he?
I don't know, it's probably
About a foot long.
About a foot,
about a foot.
14 inches, something
And
like that.
he's all, we don't really have it in here, but he's all pretty much the same. He's all covered with just
Like algae and
like an
stuff.
algae.
Mhm.
But when he spreads his lower fins, the colors on his lower fins are beautiful when he spreads them to swim. Just beautiful.
Those are
Yeah,
midnight-
that's a midnight parrot.
Midnight parrot, who is also beautiful. He's the big fish. The one below him is a blue tang. And a lot of times you find, I don't know, 50, 60, whatever.
Yeah.
Blue
of the
tangs, and they
tangs.
swim together. We call them the tang gang. And they swim together and follow the reef, and they all of a sudden pounce upon some sort of coral, and they're all eating and eating, and then they all come back up again. And so that you don't usually find just one, but then the midnight parrot is pretty spectacular.
Yeah, and he's a big guy. He's like
Mhm.
3.5, 4 feet.
Yeah.
So the Tang is pretty big too.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're
If
decent.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Is that a neuter?
It's a
It's a
nudibranch.
nudibranch,
Yeah,
okay, yeah.
nudibranch.
Yes.
He's
And
very small.
when you're in Malaysia and Indonesia, they have just tons and tons and tons, and they one is more beautiful and more spectacular than the other. And they're very small. They're, I don't know, 1.5 inches,
Yeah,
maybe
inch and a
to
half, 2
2 to
inches.
3. They're just gorgeous.
And then I think the next one is
That's nudibranch eggs.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that nudibranch you just saw, this is the way they lay their eggs. They're in ribbons.
Mhm.
Now, we've never seen them hatch or anything, but
No.
it's such a beautiful formation.
Yes.
so how long is that? I mean, if the nudibranch's an inch, how
Uh,
big is that?
That circle is probably,
Yeah.
yeah, about 2 or 3
They
inches.
work on it.
They worked on it for a long time. Yeah.
It's a lot of, they're laying eggs that is longer, a lot
Yeah.
longer than their body.
Right,
Yes.
So
right.
that's interesting.
It's another little burrfish.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
His big, beautiful eyes.
Yeah,
They're
that's-
iridescent.
yeah.
Blue.
And they
It's
just sparkle.
Mhm.
So is that one of them that's got the real sparkly eye, or there
Mhm.
might be?
Well,
okay.
yeah, they
That
all
one, yeah.
do, but some are sparklier.
Yeah, I know there were a number of
Yeah.
pictures that I've seen that you've taken with the.
Yeah, there's
sparkly
one
eyes,
that
so-
has like the blue
The next
sparkles.
picture in the center, there are 2 tiny black and white fish facing each other. And those are juvenile trunk or drumfish. And I always call them Elvis because the top that just waves back and forth like a little pompadour. And they grow into, and they're black and white, but
Yeah.
they're, I don't know, what do you think, about 12 to
Yeah,
14
probably
inches?
12 to
But
14 inches.
those are the little tiny ones when they're.
Those are probably an inch or inch and a
New.
half.
All right, well, let's do one more image and then we can take questions.
Good.
So let's find a good one.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, let's see here. What we got? Well, that's,
Oh, there you go.
yeah, okay. Yeah, what do we got here?
So the big green morays, it's hard to tell because he's tucked down in there, but they are all over Bonaire, and almost every dive site this last time we went, we saw them, and they were free swimming, and they're just elegant looking as they swim, and they're probably 6, 8 feet.
Yeah, 6 to 8 feet.
Huge, huge. But you know, I mean, they can swim past you. They don't attack. They just want to get away. But they are really magnificent. And that might have been even a spot where they were being cleaned
Yeah, I
by
was-
those shrimps or blennies. And they'll open their mouth. They go inside the mouth and clean the mouth.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, I was thinking, I thought that was the one where he's being cleaned.
He could be.
Yeah, because I think there's
Yep.
little shrimp in there too.
Mhm, mhm.
All right, do we have questions? Heather?
Not currently. If people would like to submit questions, please put them in the chat and the Q&A. But for now, I guess we could go over the trivia question again. Maybe talk about it a little bit more. We did have a winner. That was Woody and Cindy Schuster. So congratulations. And just to repeat, the question was, at what depth would you have to be to see a red ribbon as completely black? I know you guys talked about it a little bit. Is there anything else you'd like to say about that?
Well, I think the point is the water filters out color, right? So
Yeah,
that's-
I mean, congratulations for getting the right answer. I don't know that that's one that would be real easy to Google. So you obviously knew. Congratulations. No, but I think beyond that, yes, there is the ribbon thing that it
Right.
turns to black. But the thing about the photographs, that red starts going away pretty quickly. And even by 35 feet, 50 feet, a lot of the color in these has been lost, which is why you need a strobe. Because it's not that the color isn't there. It's just that the eye can't see it because the sunlight, the beams of the sunlight have been absorbed to a point where the colors start going away. And by 100 feet, about all you see is gray. I mean, the corals and everything, for the most part, look shades of gray. But as soon as you use a strobe or, a flash on your camera, all of the color is there. It's not adding the color, it's just allowing you to see what's
Well,
there.
and also, if you're a diver and you don't care to be taking photographs, or you're not ready for that yet, always have a light with you, because you get the same effect
Yeah.
with an underwater light. You can shine, and all of a sudden inside you see all this beautiful red, just like this one we have back here, all the pink and the reds and the blues that are inside that you can't really see.
Right.
But as soon as you shine the light on it, you have that advantage of seeing all those colors.
Yeah, so we both have small lights just hanging because
Mhm.
you never know.
Well, and that actually, that makes it, because with the ribbon in the flash, that's, but also your cameras have filters too, right?
Yes,
There's like, as well, you've got goggles that have a red filter, or is that
Yes.
right?
Yes.
That's something that you don't necessarily think about when you're, normal people who aren't divers, you don't often see Jacques Cousteau or something with.
With the
Right.
red, right.
No,
right.
but
I don't know
the-
that you see Jacques Cousteau much anymore. Anyway.
No, the red tint in the mask, it certainly helps add back some of the red for the shallower depths, up to probably 30, 35 feet, something like that. But
But it doesn't affect your vision and the clarity that, and what you can see. That red
Yeah.
doesn't.
oh, I did have one other thing. And
yeah,
we
go ahead.
forgot. It's like we were talking about it before we came, and it's like, what are the top three
Oh.
questions that we get from non-divers? Because most non-divers are very interested, and I would say every time, or virtually every time, we tell someone that we are divers, the very first question, the most often asked question, is how deep have you been? Everybody wants to know how deep. And for us, the answer is about 140 feet. So that's pretty deep. I mean, as the oceans go, it's very shallow, but that's deep.
And let me just break them.
Yeah.
One of the reasons we went recently to about 140 feet is we were in the blue hole in Belize, and it is a
It's a sinkhole
sinkhole. Yeah.
that's 2,000 feet deep.
Mhm. And within that is, when you look at it, you can see it from space. It's this beautiful blue circle. But when you go in there, when you get down about 70, 80 feet, or maybe more, there are the stalactites.
Yeah.
Stalactites, and they're big, and you can swim around them, around into that, where that hole is. But you had to get down to about 140 feet to do that. And
Yeah,
you're not there very long.
yeah, our more typical dive is between 60 and 80 feet to start out, and then we slowly work up to about 35 feet. We make the turn to come back at a half a tank and end up at 15. So most of these pictures were taken under 65 feet.
So then the other question is, when you are down that deep, can you see anything? Is it dark? Is it dark?
Yeah.
And
is it
as we
dark?
talked before, there's so much ambient light that really filters down pretty far. I mean,
Yeah.
you're down at 140, you can still see.
Yeah.
It's not dark.
Well, you're still in what's called the sunlight zone. And the sunlight zone means that sunlight is still penetrating. It hasn't all been absorbed. But in the sunlight zone, it's about the top 200 meters, or about whatever that is, 600 and something, 650 feet. By the time you get to 650, it's pretty dark down there. But above that, it's getting lighter and lighter. At 65, there's still plenty of light to see. And then our third question is normally, have you ever seen a shark? and everybody wants, yeah, but that's like usually number 2 or 3.
Yeah.
Number 1 is how deep.
Yeah.
But the answer is yes. We've been with a number of sharks. Now, for some reason in Bonaire, we don't see them because we're on the leeward side of the island and they're not there, but they are on the windward side. And I'm not sure what keeps them out.
Yeah, there must
But-
be a gate. They're not allowed to
Yeah.
cross.
But yes, we've seen a number of
No
sharks.
now.
They are
Yeah, there's-
absolutely beautiful animals.
Mhm.
They're perfectly designed to be a top tier predator. I mean, just to see them swim, they're so
power.
powerful and smooth and muscular but they're really not interested in us.
They're, gray reef, white tip reef, black tip reef
Yeah.
sharks, nurse sharks that are just like big giant catfish, but they're not interested. They just want to just rest till nighttime when they go feeding, they're,
Yeah, I would be far more concerned on the surface, but being down with them, we're just a part of their world and we're a big noisy fish. We're blowing bubbles in their world, but other than that, we're just swimming with them. But if you were underwater and when we've been diving and have surfers overhead, and if you're on a surfboard and you're moving your arms and kicking your feet to move your surfboard, you look an awful lot like a turtle from underneath because all they can see is the silhouette, and they do like turtles. And if you're on the surface in a black wetsuit, you look a lot like a seal.
So stay on the surface.
Yeah. No, we feel much,
become a diver.
we
Become
feel
a
much
diver.
safer. We feel much safer underwater in their world.
So we did have one question come in, and it is, how many hours of diving does it take to get certified?
Good question.
The classroom, you start out doing classroom work, and the classroom work is usually maybe eight hours or so.
It's been so
Something,
long.
yeah, it's been a while, but it's about 8 hours of classroom work, and that comes also with pool work. So usually about half, you go for about 6 or 8 evenings. Half of the class will be classroom, half will be pool work. And then you have to do 3 open water certification dives where you have to go out into open water. You can do it in a quarry, you can do it in a river, whatever.
Like, yeah.
We happen to go to Bonaire to do ours because we like warm, clear water instead.
But there are a couple of really good scuba shops in northern Kentucky, and there's, I know, at least 2 or 3 over in
In
Cincinnati, and they offer classes all the time, and you can always give them a call. They're very, very helpful.
But for the hours, it's probably 8 hours or so of classroom and pool work, and then the actual checkout dives. Usually the checkout part's about 20 minutes, and then you go do a dive after that. So maybe 3 hours of actual in open water, and you're then certified for life.
Now, how many, because you've gone through all of your advanced diving
Yeah.
training
We
as
have.
well, so you,
The stress and rescue course, once you've gotten your open water, that stress and rescue course is really wonderful. It makes you a better diver. You're more comfortable. And, if people have the time and they want to do that, I'd recommend that for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, we're both master divers.
so we just got a couple of more minutes. If there's any other questions that come in, otherwise we'll continue to maybe talk about
Some picks.
some picks, maybe a pick or 2 more. Let's see, I'm trying to think one that I really like. I like well, that's a fun one.
Yeah.
Let me talk about him.
Well, that is a, where did we,
Blue spotted stingray.
yeah, and I think we were in Indonesia.
Yeah, I think he
We
was
saw
in
that.
Indonesia.
And just very colorful, but smaller than some other rays like the stingrays that we see here, or the spotted eagle rays, but just a beautiful, beautiful.
Was he only 2 or 3 feet or
Maybe 3.
Yeah.
3 feet
probably
across,
3 foot
something like that.
diameter. Yeah, now they can get bigger, but he's about 3 foot
Mhm.
diameter.
Yeah.
But But we've been asked a number of times, you know, people that have seen these pictures and said, which one is your favorite? And the answer is they all are.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the one I'm looking at the time, because every picture up here has with it a story and a memory, and not only of seeing it, but of the location we were in and what we
Well,
were
and just sharing
experiencing.
it.
Yeah,
It's so nice to have a buddy. That's
Yeah.
your scuba buddy.
Well, I think we are about out of time, right?
Yeah.
So thank you all for, oh, Heather, go ahead and finish up.
thank you.
So we will go ahead and wrap up. We'd like to remind everyone that Faces of the Deep is on display through October 30th, so through the end of this month. And we would encourage you all to come and see tonight's photographs up close at the museum. Also, all little ghosts, goblins, monsters, and mummies are invited to BCM for some not so scary Halloween fun. Halloween Hoopla returns to Nature Play at BCM Saturday, October 29th from 1 until 2 p.m. There will be creepy crawly craft stations set up in the playscape where children can learn about the creatures that live in the museum's backyard. Costumes are encouraged but not required, and it is free while supplies last. In case of inclement weather, the activities will move inside of the museum. Stay tuned for our announcement of the next History Hour, which will take place on November 2nd. And that is all we have for this evening. So thank you again to all of our sponsors and supporters of BCM. We'd like to thank the staff, trustees, and members of the Behringer-Crawford Museum. For more Northern Kentucky history through the week, you can check out our Facebook page and our YouTube channels, where you can find the latest installments of our Curator's Chat with Jason. Please like and subscribe on those videos. Until then, take care, everyone, and good night. Thanks, everyone, and especially thank you to John, Martha, and Jason.